Mick Jagger made a promise when he was young. He once said he'd never become the kind of rock star still performing the same songs at 45. He'd rather be dead. He's 82 now, and he's still on stage. Not because he needs the money, not because he has anything left to prove, because he can't seem to stop. And that's where this story gets strange. Most people think the Rolling Stones keep touring because they want to. I don't think that's true. I think they reach a point where stopping becomes harder than continuing. Because somewhere, over the last 60 years, the Rolling Stones stopped being just for musicians. They became something much bigger, a myth, an institution, an expectation shared by millions of people. And once millions of people believe you should exist forever, walking away is no longer a personal decision. So the real question isn't why the Rolling Stones still tour. It's this. How do you escape a legend that the world refuses to let die? Because once a myth becomes bigger than the people behind it, there is no way out. The trap started long before the stadium tours, long before the money, long before anyone thought the Rolling Stones would still exist 60 years later. In 1964, their first manager, Loog Oldham, made a calculated decision. The Beatles were already lovable, so the Stones would become the opposite. And it worked faster than anyone expected. By 1966, Keith Richards wasn't just a guitarist anymore. He had become an archetype. Jagger wasn't just a singer. He had become a symbol of transgression. And once millions of people believe they know who you are, changing becomes almost impossible. Because symbols don't get to change their minds. There is a specific turning point most people miss. After the 1972 Exile on a Main Street tour, one of the most chaotic, destructive tours in rock history, there was serious internal conversation about stopping, about stepping back. And then the album sold 4 million copies. The audience didn't care about the internal chaos. They loved the chaos. They consumed it. They made it part of what the Stones were supposed to be. That's when something shifted. The identity was no longer theirs to manage. It belonged to the people buying it. And what an audience owns, it does not release. Thing about a Stones concert in 2024, and this is what no one says out loud. The audience isn't only there to hear music. They are there to relieve something. What the audience wants is not evolution. It's confirmation. Proof that something from their youth is still physically standing in front of them. And every time the Stones step on stage and deliver exactly that, they sign a new contract. One more year of being what everyone needs them to be. Tell me what you think in the comments, but do you believe Rolling Stones fans are partly responsible for trapping them by refusing to let them go? But the audience was only part of the trap, because by the 90s, something much larger had taken over. By the 1990s, the Stones were no longer a band deciding to tour. They were a corporation sustaining itself. The Voodoo Lounge tour in 1994 grossed $300 million. Think about that number for a moment. That's not a concert tour. That's an infrastructure. Hundreds of employees. Contracts layered inside contracts. A logistical system with a momentum of its own. And here's what happens when you build something that size. Stomping stops being a personal decision. It becomes an economic event, a structural collapse. Charlie Watts understood this. In private, he repeatedly referred to touring as mixed band, a machine he tolerated rather than chose. He kept playing until months before his death in 2021. Not because he had to, because the machine kept running. And stepping off required a reason big enough to justify what stopping would cost everyone else. That's not passion. That's gravity. Here's the final layer. And this is the one nobody talks about. The Rolling Stones cannot stop because stopping would do something far more threatening than ending a career. It would expose the gap between the myth and the man. As long as they keep performing, the identity stays intact. Mick Jagger, at 80, is still Mick Jagger. Dangerous, vital, irreplaceable. The myth absorbs age. It absorbs grief. It absorbed the death of Charlie Watts without breaking. But the moment they stop, the myth loses its container. And without the container, people start asking the question the Stones have spent 60 years making unanswerable. What was it really? Not the songs, not the tours, the thing underneath. The actual man, without the performance around them. That question is too large. So the performance continues. So why can the Rolling Stones stop? Not because of money, though there is money. Not because of ego, though there is ego. And not because Mick Jagger forgot what he told that journalist in 1991. It's because they built an identity so durable, so deeply unbounded in the emotional memory of 3 generations, that it no longer has an off switch. They didn't get trapped by fame. They got trapped by what they had to become. But there may never be a version of this story where Mick Jagger simply walks away. Because Mick Jagger said performing Satisfaction at 45 would be pathetic. Maybe he wasn't wrong. Maybe he just misunderstood the problem. The question was never whether Mick Jagger could stop. It was whether the Rolling Stones ever could. That's all for me. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, stay curious. Au revoir.